You can
Hello,
begin now.
shall I start?
हाँ हाँ
Okay.
हाँ हाँ हाँ
So record हो रहा है?
हाँ जी,
Is it
रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट हो
recording?
गई है. हाँ जी,
अच्छा.
रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट हो गई है.
Okay, thank you. So hello everyone. So my name is Saima. I shall be teaching you polity. Okay, not teaching, but it's just that I'll be telling you what to focus on. Okay, and so I think some are already from the polity batch in the class, right? Is there
This
anybody
won't
from the
be
polity?
interactive. This won't be
अच्छा,
interactive
अच्छा.
because
Okay,
lot
okay.
many students are there ना, so उसमें
हाँ,
फिर
हाँ,
वो
correct,
ये
correct.
रहेगा कि बीच में sounds आ जाएंगे. That's why. Only
ठीक है.
chat will be there.
Okay. Fine. So I can see there are so many students from polity batch and I think from the anthropology batch also. Okay. So for them it will be a bit easier because they already know me. Okay. So let's begin. So we shall be taking first 5 lectures today and first 5 chapters, I mean. So, okay. So this is your historical background. You have to see first how the British rule started in India. Okay. And then I shall be taking all your this questions at the end. Okay. Only if in case I'm not audible or anything, then only you can text me. The rest you can questions I'll be addressing at the end. Okay, so that there is this flow maintained in the lecture. So now we all know that trading started in 1600s. Okay, then there was Diwani rights were granted, and Diwani rights were granted both in the case of the revenue as well as civil rights were given to the East India Company, okay, and especially for Bihar, Bengal, and Odisha. You know the Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar, etc. Historical background you already know. So I'm here just for the political development. Okay. Uske baad, you know that how the revolt began, what were the consequences, what were the results that you have done in history, and in 1950, then slowly and slowly we adopted the constitution. Okay, constitution came into being, and this was the basis. Okay, the British rule in India, that was actually the basis for giving rise to the legal framework that we have currently in India. Okay, then this constitution developed how in these two phases. One was the company rule and other was the, am I not visible? Am I
You are,
visible?
you are, you are.
Somebody has said that you are Kajal. Kajal, there might be some problem in your internet. Anyway, so our constitution developed how in these two phases. One was the company rule, another was the crown rule. Okay, so this was the development, the time period 1773 to 58. Okay, till the revolt, and after that, from revolt to 1947, we know that there was crown rule. Okay, Indian territories directly came under the administration of Crown and the Britain Parliament. Now, the first act that was there was the Regulating Act of 1773. Why the word regulating is there? Because earlier East India Company was governing in a specific way. Okay, which was a sort of exploitative. It was exploitative till the end, no doubt in that. But the problem was that the exploitation was very much conspicuous, okay, till crown rule. After crown rule, it was sort of shown that we are here for the good governance of India. We are here to civilize you, and we are here to make you able to govern yourselves. Okay, till crown rule, it was, the philosophy was different. Okay, now what happened was, it was the time of American Revolution. Okay, so British was already suffering defeat in America. Okay, which is now the current USA, and two things were in the background. One was the American Revolution. Second was the East India Company was going bankrupt. Okay, why they were going bankrupt was because there, whosoever the officials working there, they were doing what? They were going for the proliferation of their own wealth. Okay, amassing huge wealth, taking gifts, taking all the bribes, etc. from this lower rung, okay, to do their work, but the company per se was going bankrupt. So they had approached to Britain Parliament for loan. Okay. Now when Britain Parliament came to know that East India Company is here asking us for loan, even though they have so many resources at their disposal in India, then why they are coming for loan? So there was some problem, obviously. Okay. And because of the reverses suffered, or you can say the defeat suffered in the American Revolution, there were some lessons that the British had learned. Okay. So they learned some lessons. Those lessons were then applied in the India. Okay. So they said that if we are giving East India Company some unbridled powers, it will directly affect the prestige of British Parliament. Why? Because East India Company was going bankrupt. Okay. So now they started this Regulating Act of 1773. So why regulating? Because they wanted to regulate all the affairs of East India Company, so that the company is not taking any bribe, any other source of income from outside, because that was directly affecting the governance of the Britain, the governance of the India by the hands of the Britain. Okay, so they wanted to regulate East India Company and all the other affairs that they were holding in India. Therefore, the first point, to control and regulate the affairs of East India Company. Now here you have to take care of these things. Okay, what things? These words, to control and regulate, because these statements are asked directly. Okay, verbatim, these are copied by the UPSC and asked in the MCQs. Okay, so this can be a statement asked directly. Regulating Act of 1773 was there to control and regulate the affairs of the East India Company. Second, to recognize the political and administrative functions of the company. Okay, they wanted to recognize. Why? Because this is political function. See, East India Company, you are suffering some problem. You have your at the verge of going bankrupt. So now this is your political function and this is your administrative function. This was well defined, so that there is no confusion and there is no bad governance by the East India Company. Then this was actually a step towards the centralization of administration, because they were even earlier they had the unbridled powers, so they were misusing those powers. So British Parliament, after coming coming to the knowledge of all these things, they wanted to go for the centralization. Okay, because of the two things that I told you. First, the USA thing. Second, the bankruptcy thing. Okay, so these 3 points you have to cram. Then centralization, so what will be there now? The governor of Bengal was called as a Governor General of Bengal, because he was given some more power, so that they can some people are raising hands. I don't know, you can just type in the chat box, because I don't know why you are asking what you are asking for. Okay, you can just comment in the chat box, then I'll see that. Anyway, so now the Governor of Bengal became the Governor General of Bengal. Again, this is asked, okay, in which act this Governor of Bengal became the Governor General of Bengal. Okay, and who was the first? This also you have to remember. So Governor General of Bengal, who was the first? The Warren Hastings. Then the Executive Council was created. Okay, you have to remember the development of the Executive Council as well as the Legislative Council that we will see. Okay, first Executive Council was created. Executive Council of 4 members to assist this particular person. This person was given the centralization of all the powers were given to him. Okay, so now the governors of the Bombay, you know that there were 3 presidencies, one the Bombay, one the Madras, and third the Bengal. Okay, now these 2 were given the earlier they had the separate powers. Now their powers directly came under the supervision of the Governor General of Bengal. Okay, they were made the subordinates to the Governor General of Bengal. Then Supreme Court was also established for the first time in 1774. Okay, because there were earlier some disputes also after this bankruptcy case. So now they wanted something to have at least some institution that will take care of all these things. Okay, so what was the constitution of Supreme Court? 1 plus 3. So 1 was the Chief Justice, obviously, and 3 were the judges. Okay, then the Code of Directors, they were given the task to report on the revenue, civil, and military affairs. These 3 keywords, again, you have to remember. Revenue, civil, and military. All the 3 were given to the, all these powers were given to the court of directors. They were to report on all these three aspects directly to the parliament. Now, this was asked in the form of a statement, because the this revenue thing was, the statement was there, something I cannot recall exactly the statement. Tomorrow we'll do some MCQs. There I'll show you. But I think in 1813 or 1830, okay, act was given, and this point was kept there, that COD were to report on the revenue matters. So now you know that COD, they were to report on the revenue matters in the 1774 only, not in 1813, not in 1833. Okay, so the statements like these are asked. So this statement will be put in some other act, and the statement from that act will be put under regulating act. So just to confuse you. Okay, so now you should know what all are there in the 1774. Okay, simply to control and regulate, simple, to recognize the political and administrative functions. Why? Because you know what the problems were and what they wanted to achieve. Now what was there? This was just the centralization. So now all the powers and all the governors were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. And who was the first Governor General of Bengal? Warren Hastings. Okay, so to look after all the disputes, Supreme Court was established. 1+3 was the arrangement. Then COD was there, very important, because this is asked, this might be asked again. So they were to report on the revenue and civil and military affairs. Okay, simple. Then after the 1774 act, there was then need, obviously they have to, there are some loopholes, there are some problems in the act because it was for the first time. Then they kept amending the act and bringing some new act, okay, so as to suit it better, suit the situation of India better. Then the Act of Settlement came in 1781. Now you know that Supreme Court was established. Okay, now what the powers of the Supreme Court were, you can see in this act. Okay, this was just a body created. All the powers were given to the Governor General of Bengal only. This was just, you know, an eyewash sort of. Okay, because the Governor General and its council was totally exempted from Supreme Court. So Supreme Court had no say on the functioning of the Governor General or its council. Even the servants of the East India Company, okay, they were also exempted from the Supreme Court. Okay, then they also excluded the revenue matters from the Supreme Court. Then now you can imagine like what for the Supreme Court was there. Okay, then the Supreme Court was to have jurisdiction over all the inhabitants. Okay, now these common people who were residing there in Calcutta, so the jurisdiction of Supreme Court was over those inhabitants only, and it was for the personal matters only. And what was used was the personal law. Personal law was seen, and the conflicts etc. were to be resolved by the Supreme Court. Rest everybody was kept outside. Servants were kept outside, officials, the Governor General, okay, and the revenue matters, everything was outside the Supreme. This can be asked as a statement, whether these were included within the jurisdiction of Supreme Court or excluded from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. Okay, then the appeal. Now again, the appeal from provincial courts did not go to the Supreme Court but to the Governor General. Okay, then the Governor General directly regulated the provincial courts. So you can see what Supreme Court was made for. Okay, just for the inhabitants and their personal matters, etc. So all these things were there. Now next act is the Pitt's India Act. This is again a very important act. Okay, the questions are asked from this. So see, today we'll do just these points that are important from prelims perspective. Tomorrow, before going to the other lecture, first we'll do MCQs for first 15 minutes. Okay, on these previous chapters. Okay, Act of Settlement. Rohit, I just told you that since Supreme Court was created in 1774, okay, now what was the jurisdiction of Supreme Court was, that was given in the sort of Act of Settlement. Okay, so I told you Governor General was exempted. The council of the Governor General, what was the council? The Executive Council of 4 members, okay, that we read in the Regulating Act, that was again exempted. And then the servants were exempted, revenue matters were exempted. What Supreme Court was there only just to see the personal matters, personal conflicts, disputes, whatever were there in Calcutta. Okay, so and the personal law was used. Okay, whatever we followed. Suppose we are the inhabitants of the Calcutta and we follow some particular law, and that law was used to solve those disputes. So Supreme Court was for this only. Rest everything was exempted. Even the provincial courts that existed, those came directly under the Governor General, not under the Supreme Court. So today we have subordinate courts, then we have this High Court, and then we have Supreme Court. So Supreme Court has a jurisdiction over all these, right? But this is not the case here. Okay, so the provincial courts came directly under the Governor General and not under the Supreme Court. So this was the Act of Settlement. Now we have the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Okay. So please remember dates also. Everything was under Governor General. Supreme Court had nothing to do with the provincial courts. Okay. Now the feature of Pitt's India Act of 1784. So I told you to remember the date also along with the act. The chronology should be clear, which act came first and what were all the provisions within that act. Okay. Then the next act, its provisions along with the date. Okay. This is now the third act, the Pitt's India Act. Then the first point was again here, the centralization was continuing. It continued till 1833. That was the peak of centralization. And then there was the decentralization that we will see. So centralization is continuing. So what was there? The commercial and political function that we already saw in the previous one. You can see here the political and administrative functions were recognized for the company. It was for the first time recognized. Abhi tak it was a hodgepodge. Okay, nobody knew what to do. Now in the Pitt's India Act, again, the commercial and the political functions, they were again bifurcated. It clearly mentioned that Court of Directors will directly look after the commercial functions and Board of Control will directly look after the political functions. Okay, it was very, so it was a sort of dual government, okay, double government. So commercial government was different. They were doing, COD was doing directly for the commercial purposes and BOC was directly dealing with the political functions. Now again, these three, again, you have to remember, okay, civil, military, and revenue. Please remember all these, okay, whatever, even if you some code also MRC, CMR, CRM, whatever, but you should be knowing that all these three were there since regulating act only, because I told you this one, na? See, it was there only. Okay, so COD in the regulating act, they were to report. Now here, the Board of Control was created and the Board of Control was given these powers. You have to look after all these powers. So there was some change made in Pitt's India Act. Okay, so these were included under the political functions. So remember this double government also. And now the Executive Council of 3 members was there. Okay, so you can see the development. Earlier it was the 4 members. Okay, remember this also. It was the 4 member right here. Now it is of 3 members only. It is not of 4 members. Okay, because now the dual government is there. Some functions are divided here, some divided here, and now we have the Executive Council of 3 members. Now, what was the significance of the Pitt's India Act? The territories were now called the British possessions. This you have to remember. Which act first demarcated Indian territories as the British possessions in India? Okay. So the British government was given the supreme control over the company affairs and its administration. Okay, because I told you now, since this East India Company was not governing Indian territories properly, so the British government thought of intervening. Okay, so they thought of coming directly to the picture, and these bodies were created, and they ultimately were responsible to the British government only. So you can say they directly wanted to control the affairs of the administration, affairs of the East India Company and its administration. So this was the significance of Pitt's India Act. This is nothing but this is Lakshmikant. Okay, totally Lakshmikant. Those who have read already, we have done polity in detail. Okay, very comprehensively already. Okay, in the previous batch. Now this is only for the prelims perspective. Okay, just the I would say we're just skimming the pages. Okay, otherwise we have done this in detail. Now the backdrop of 1793 Act. Okay, there was this Lord Cornwallis had come. Now you should know the chronology of all these governor generals also, that you might have done in the. So this was the time of Lord Cornwallis. Now he was very much sort of ladla. Okay, he demanded something. He said that no, I want overriding powers. If I'm in India, I want something more. which whatever are existing there in India is not enough for me. Okay, I told you he was very ladla. Then he said that I want to be the commander in chief also. Okay, this is not. I don't want only these powers. I want these extra powers only. Okay. Then Act of 1786 was passed to fulfill his demands. Imagine, he was so important. Then the demands were again incorporated in the Charter Act, the Charter Act of 1793. Okay. Charter means something. The literal meaning, if you see, it means something that some rules, regulations are there mentioned in this act. Okay. So what earlier was there in the 1786 Act, this is not some important act. That is why just one point is mentioned here in the Lakshmikant. Okay. So, but in the backdrop of this act, we can see some points in the Charter Act. You should be very clear with the chronology. So in 1793, the first Charter Act came, and this overriding power, we saw the extension of all these powers. Okay, it started from the Cornwallis. Okay, then it got matured, and then it got extended to all the future governor generals. So after Cornwallis, it was then continued. Okay, the governor general will be given the overriding powers, and he shall be made the commander in chief. Then it continued. So there was this extension. Then more powers over subordinate presidencies, because I told you the centralization continued. Okay, this is the centralization only. So early, if there were some some few powers give left the presidencies. Okay, after centralization, now even those powers were now given to the governor general. Okay, so the trade monopoly of the company was extended for 20 more years. Okay, it was going very well. Company was ruling very, they were taking everything from India, and everything was there at their disposal. Okay, East India Company was having the monopoly over the trade in India. So it was extended for 20 more years without any problem. Okay, now even the board of control was to be, it was decided that why are we giving them salary from Britain? Let them be given from the Indian revenue. Okay, let's exploit them more. Okay, so this was the another point that you have to remember within the Charter Act of 1793. So just the extension of the overriding powers, okay, which the earlier the Lord Cornwallis had demanded, which was granted to him in 1786. Then there was more centralization. The monopoly continued, and it was further extended for 20 more years, and board of control. Hello? Something happened to the Zoom. Just 1 second. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Okay, okay. The Zoom just got, yeah, okay. Fine, fine. Anyway, sorry, there was some interruption. Okay. So this was the Charter Act of 1793. Now comes the next Charter Act of 1813. Okay, this is again a very important act, very important, because questions are asked from 1813, 1833, 53, okay, 1909, 1919, 1935. So these are very important acts. Okay, every act is very important, whichever is mentioned here. Okay. So now, before this 1813, there were some things that were happening in the background. Now, this was the time of the French Revolution again. Okay, things were going worse in France. Okay, so you might have read the world history by now. I hope so. So, what happened was the Napoleon Bonaparte. You know him. Okay, so you might be knowing his continental policy also. है ना? So, under the continental policy introduced by the Napoleon Bonaparte, the British were not allowed to access the markets in the Europe. Okay, the markets were blocked. So Napoleon Bonaparte at that time had a very strong position. So he did not let anybody from any businesses from the Britain to access the markets in the Europe. So now all the Britain businessmen, they were now confused. They were frustrated where to go, where to find the markets. So now they started asking the British government to give us access to the Asian markets. Okay, so access to Asian markets. Now this was the first thing. ठीक है. Second was the concept of, so there was a wave of laissez-faire at that. It was a new concept that we want free markets, we want competitive markets. Okay, we want, so whosoever is more competitive, let that person dominate the market. Okay, the free market system was there, and the British businesses also needed some cheap labor in India. Cheap, the lower rung of the clerks, or you can say the labor, you can simply talk the workers, okay, at the lowest level. They wanted some workers to train them a little bit, to give them some basic Western education, so that they can use them. They can simply exploit them. Okay. These were the things at the backdrop happening during the this 1800 onwards. Then came the Charter Act of 1813 to address all these problems. Now, what to do under this situation? Okay. Now, all these points you will remember because of these three reasons. Firstly, the trade was thrown open to all business merchants. Why? Because I told you. Firstly, they were not given access by the Napoleon Bonaparte to the European markets. So now they had to explore the Asian markets. So now all British merchants, they were given access. Okay, you can, because they cannot, there was this sort of protest. Why are you giving only East India Company access to the Indian market and the rest of the markets? What about us? Okay, so they were given the access to Indian markets. Secondly, but here the East India Company had some, they managed to retain a little bit of monopoly. Okay, monopoly in the trade in tea and trade with China. है ना? This has been asked so many number of times by the UPSC. ठीक है? In which act this particular point, the statement is given, okay, and then you have to identify which act was it. ठीक है? So this is the little bit of monopoly East India Company continue. That was the trade in tea and trade with China. Then it asserted the sovereignty of British Crown. This again was asked, which act asserted the sovereignty of British Crown? So all these points are, I told you, verbatim, these are copied by UPSC and asked in the form of statements. Okay, tomorrow we'll do the questions. There you will understand how important each and every point is. Okay, so then it asserted the sovereignty of British Crown, then allowed the Christian missionaries. Okay, so I told you last time also, the process of evangelization, it was already there. Okay, the conversion was taking place, but now it allowed, it was sort of, the state was facilitating now the convergence. That was again there. Okay, the spread of Western education. Now you might feel that British were here for some good also. Okay, they wanted Indian people to get some education also, but no, it was not the case. Why? Because this is the actual reason. They wanted the cheap labor, cheap clerks, cheap workers at the ground level, so that so for that reason they introduced this Western education. Okay, it took some 1-2 more decades. Okay, and then till then it was just on paper only, and 1 lakh was there earmarked for this. So you have to remember this point also. Then local governments were given to, they were given the power to impose some taxes on people, and they had also they were also been given the powers to punish in case some people are not paying the taxes. So 1813, you have to remember all these points. So remember these 3 things, and then you can relate. Okay, even if you have not read it properly. So if you know the reason, you can say that yes, this might have happened in that Charter Act. Okay. Now the Charter Act of 1833, the next one. Okay, this was a final step towards the centralization. This was a very important step. Okay, and after this we can see the sort of decentralization started. This was the final step. At that time it was suiting the Indian demand. After this, what was suiting the Indian scenario was the sort of decentralization. So whatever was the condition, British came with the particular act for that. Okay, just to continue their hegemony and the suzerainty over the Indian territory. Now this is also called as the St. Helena Act. You should be knowing why, because there was this, maybe this might be asked. I don't think this has been asked in now, but still you should be knowing, because you never know. So there was this act, there was this island in the, I think, southwest of Atlantic. You can just check it on the map. Okay, this island was there, and earlier it was under East India Company. Okay, but now the British Parliament felt that East India Company is not doing properly. Everywhere it is now in shambles, sort of. So then this island was taken from the East India Company by the British Parliament, and then it was directly administered. Okay. So it happened at the same time. That is why this act was also called as the Saint Helena Act. Okay. So what were the features that were for India? Firstly, the Governor General of Bengal became the Governor General of India. Now imagine why this is called the peak of centralization, because earlier act is this was called as the Governor General of Bengal. No doubt that all other governors were put under the subordination of Governor General of Bengal, but now he was made the Governor General of entire India. Okay, that is why this was the peak of centralization. Now he had all the powers with him, the civil powers, the military powers. This can be asked, okay, which all were the powers exclusive for the Governor General of India in 1833 Act. So the civil powers, the military powers, the exclusive legislative powers. So all these things were under the Governor General of India. And who was the first? The William Benedict. This is again asked 4 or 5 times till now. Okay. Then again, because this was the centralization, so even if some powers were there, some legislative powers were there with the Bombay and Madras, these were taken by the Governor General of India. Okay. Then the earlier laws till now, you have to remember these. I used to make some acronym. Suppose for 33, I had made some GAO sort of. Okay. So G was the Governor General of India. A was the acts earlier. This or whatever laws, whatever these provisions were there within the acts, those are called as regulations. But now it came to be known as act, है ना? Like we have today, this law becomes then the act. Okay. Then another A is the administrative body. It was just now the administrative body. Okay. And O was the open competition. I'm just telling you how to make this. Okay. So that you don't mix up points here and there in the prelims. So come up with things like this so that you can. Then I told you now these laws were called as the acts, and for which the Indian Law Commission was established. Now you have to pass some act. You have to come up with certain in the form of the act. So for that there should be some law commission. Okay. And Lord Macaulay was there, who was the chair of this particular commission, Indian Law Commission. Okay. And this particular chairman was for the codification of laws, because if you have to pass some act, you have to codify that, okay, and give them a particular form so that it becomes an act. So Indian Law Commission, you have to remember. Then East India Company no longer a commercial body, it was now an administrative body. So I told you, remember A with this. Then the Executive Council again became 4-member body. So first it was 4, then it became 3, now it is again 4. But it is sort of Adha 4. Why 4? Why Adha 4? Because this one which was added, it was not permanent yet, and he had no voting rights. Okay. So this one was not at par with the rest of the 3. Okay. You have to remember that this was 3 plus 1. And who was this one? This was this Lord Macaulay. Okay. Then there was this attempt to introduce the open competition. There was this attempt only because you may have read it. So it was later done in 1853 because COD at this point of time, they totally were against it. So it was not, it couldn't happen. Okay. So, but you have to remember when did it start? When did they first attempt to introduce this open competition? Should be very clear, in 1833. Then in Britain, there was this end of slavery. Okay. So they did it for all the possessions. Okay. So we were also a possession of Britain. So here again, the mitigation of slavery was done, but not the end of slavery. Okay. If you find the word end, so that is not possible. You cannot just do it overnight. It takes a long time. Okay. So if end of slavery is given in the question, so there is some gadwad. Okay. It won't be correct. So if mitigation is given, then it is correct. So mitigation of slavery was there. So now, just to recap, so Governor General of India. Okay. Second, the regulations were called as acts. Then East India Company is now just an administrative body and not a commercial body. Then Executive Council again became 4-membered, and there was attempt of bringing in open competition and mitigation of slavery. Done. Then is the Charter Act of 1853. This is important. Again, I told you all these acts are important because verbatim the statements are asked. So what are the features? the legislative and executive functions separated. Till now, commercial and political were there, commercial and executive were there. Now it is legislative and executive for the first time. Okay, that is why we say that this was I think this was a question also in some mains. I don't remember whether in UPSC or in some of the state PSCs. I have seen this question. Why this 1853 is called as some sort of a skeleton? Okay, not 1835, not 1935. Anybody get this question? 1935, we know that forms the skeleton of Indian constitution that we have right now, है ना? Because we have taken the structural part from the Government of India Act 1935. But if you are asked 1853, okay, so there again you should be knowing how to address that question. Why this is called a skeleton sort of? Because it was for the first time legislative and executive functions were separated. So right now we also have executive have its own function, legislature has its own function, judiciary has its own function. So this was a rudimentary form of what we have currently. Okay. So now the legislative functions are separate. So we need some council for this legislative council. Okay. So there were some new members, 6 new members were added the legislative council. Okay. It created the council created. The 6 members were added. Okay. These were the legislative councils and can be known as Governor General's Legislative Council. Okay. Its name was Indian Legislative Council. Like we have executive, then we have Rajya Sabha, we have Lok Sabha, है ना? So things like that. So this is the legislature, this is the executive. So this is the rudimentary form of the arrangement only. Okay, just remember, Indian Legislative Council or the mini parliament came in 1853 because the legislative and executive functions were created. And ठीक है.
हेलो सॉरी मैम वो वॉइस ब्रेक हो रही है काफी ज्यादा.
अच्छा.
Maybe you can try switching your video off if that helps with the connection.
Just 1 second, I'll just check. Hello, is it fine now?
A little better. कोई बात नहीं, आप कंटिन्यू करो, मैं बता दूंगी if it breaks again.
अच्छा. नेटवर्क तो ठीक आ रहा है, मतलब फुल दिखा रहा है. Is it fine now or shall I do something?
हाँ ठीक है, थोड़ा कोई नहीं, कंटिन्यू प्लीज. I'll tell you if it happens again.
Okay. So now I told you that in 1833, okay, there was an attempt to introduce open competition. But now in 1853, the open competition was sort of, it was accepted by the COD was, since now it was getting a bit weaker than earlier because now we were moving towards the decentralization. So their say was not that important now. Okay, that is why they could do this. But there were some conditions there, like some age, minimum age was there, and some that we will do later. Okay, and some place was kept outside for examination, and syllabus was totally Western and things like that. So that those problems were there, and that you can do in history also. So open competition was started, where we had the covenanted civil services, and the committee was appointed for this thing. Then how to go about the open competition. Then in this act, we had the we also had the 4 members of executive council. In this also we have the 4 members, but the difference is that there I told you it was sort of 4 members. It was other 4. It was the 1 member which was added. He was not enjoying all the powers at par with the rest of the 3. But now the Lord Macaulay was made the full-time member. Okay? So it became the 4-member body. So pura 4 member. Earlier it was other, now it is full member. Okay? Now This is again an important point which is asked by the UPSC. No time period is specified. So earlier I told you that 20-year was the extension period given to the acts, but in this act it was sort of unstable. The government was becoming unstable because there were changing scenarios in India and outside also. So they did not specify any time period that we'll continue it for 20 years, 30 years. They did not say anything. They just did not comment on this. Then some local representation was also given in Indian Legislative Council. So 4 out of 6 members were appointed by these 4 provinces, the Madras, Bombay, Bengal, and Agra. So this is again showing a sort of decentralization, because the local representation is given some voice. So 4 out of 6, just remember. Then there was separate governor created for Bengal. Apart from the Governor General that we have, there was separate, because I told you this was the decentralization. So local representation is there. That again highlights the decentralization. Separate governor for Bengal is there. It again highlights the decentralization. Then I told you board of directors is becoming a bit weaker than the earlier times. Okay? Their strength was also reduced. So from 24, it was reduced to 18. This also you can remember. Then I told you why this is called as the skeleton of the current system in India, because this is the foundation of the modern parliamentary system. Okay, I told you the reason already. Okay, so these are the points of 1853 Act that you have to remember. So now you know that there was this revolt in the backdrop. So there obviously some changes were to be done. Otherwise, it could have worsened the situation in India. So the Government Act 1858 was enacted, and this was called as a good act of good governance. Why? Because it was sort of they wanted to show to the people that we are here for your betterment. Okay, we want to provide you the good governance in India. So we are coming up with all these provisions. So whatever you felt till now was exploitative, we are just doing away with all those things. We are now here only for your good governance. Okay, so it was just to an I sort of. Then India was to be governed by Her Majesty. So when you are giving the title that you are now under the crown, so it is sort of expected that since crown means some queen, and queen would be very benevolent nature, she'll be very much empathetic towards the people. So it was given actually that sort of color. Okay, that is why India is to be governed by Her Majesty now, and now the Governor General of India is now changing into the Viceroy. So the wording was changed. Okay, and this Viceroy was the direct representative of Crown. So Crown cannot come and directly govern the India, but Crown will govern the India through Viceroy. Okay, so then you have the India. So this was actually he was a direct representative, and this was under the indirect governance of the Crown. Okay. Then it ended the double government, COD, BOC, both these were ended. Okay, earlier system was totally done away with. Secretary of State was created. Okay, and the Secretary of State was given the complete authority and control over the administration. Okay. Then the member of British Cabinet. So we had Viceroy also, we had SOS also, Secretary of State. Then the member of British Cabinet. This Secretary of State was actually the member of British Cabinet. So this is a sort of cabinet is ruling India now. Okay, but via this particular member. And this Secretary of State, when in council, okay, there was a 15-member council again. So when this Secretary of State in council, it was to be treated as a body corporate. So corporate can be sued, and it can sue also. Okay, this was its legal stand at that time. Okay, just remember, it was given the complete authority over the Indian territories. Then who was SOS? It was actually the member of the British Cabinet. And when in council, it was treated as a body corporate, so that it can sue and can be sued also. Then I told you it has some council also. It was a 15-member. Okay, the council was a 15-member. Again, you have to remember this point. This council was advisory body only. And who was the first Secretary of State? The Lord Stanley. You might be asked, because since Warren Hastings has been asked, Benedict has been asked, so this can be asked also. Okay, Lord Stanley. Then Next is the Indian Councils of 1861. Now came the Indian Councils Act. Okay, they were changing the names so that show that something new is coming. Okay, is it clear? Is the voice clear, or is there any problem? Okay. So now the Indian Councils Act of 1861. Okay. So this was just to seek the cooperation of Indians in the administration, because I told you the things were changing in India. Okay. There was growing resentment and people were becoming aware because of the Western developments. So now they were going for more and more decentralization, and they wanted to placate Indians in India. Okay. They wanted to seek the cooperation. Okay. If we include them into the government, they were not trying to include them and give some powers. No, it was just to get them. Okay, that was the aim, and no real powers were given to them. So they again went for the decentralization in this, and they started calling their councils, their bodies, as representative institutions. Why? Because they wanted Indians to be included in the lawmaking process. Okay, so the viceroy was to nominate some Indians as official members. So earlier, there used to be no direct involvement of Indians within these councils. But now the viceroy could nominate some Indians. So accordingly, 3 Indians were nominated. First was these were actually why these were nominated, because of revolt of 1857. Now actually they wanted to specify the rulers in India. So Raja of Banaras, you will see the Maharaja, you will see the Sir Dinkar Roy. So these were all included within this council as the non-official members. Okay. Then the decentralization. How this was by the legislative powers, and this, when you are restoring the legislative powers, now they can do, they can see, they can actually check the pulse of their own presidencies, and they can come up with a particular legislation for their own presidency. So now the decentralization was again given shape. Then some new legislative councils were created, so that there are some more and more people are should feel comfortable with the crown rule. Okay. So in Bengal it was created in 62, Northwest Frontier Province in 1886, and Punjab 97. So these along with the this restoration of legislative powers to these presidencies. Then this is again very important portfolio, and this is asked. Okay. Portfolio system was introduced by Lord Canning. At that time, he was the viceroy. So he introduced the portfolio system. The date is so remember this, 1859. The portfolio system was introduced in India. What is portfolio? You might be knowing today we have Home Ministry. So that is one portfolio. We have External Affairs Ministry. We have this ministry. Accordingly, there are different portfolios given to different cabinet ministers. Okay. So the foundation was laid in the 1859 only. Okay. So the members of the Viceroy's Council were given charge of different departments at that time. So not only this, the Viceroy could issue the ordinances also during emergency. Okay. And the Executive Council was now of 5 members. So earlier it used to be 4, 3, 4, 4. Okay. Now it is of 5 members. You have to remember. So these are all the 5 departments, the 5 portfolios, the 5 ministers. Okay. So home, military, law, revenue, and finance. Then comes the Act of 1892, the Indian Councils Act of 1892. This is again important. Why? Because this is considered to be the success of moderates. You might have read in history that there were some demands of the moderates that were sort of addressed in this Councils Act. Okay. Now, what are the features? Firstly, earlier I told you, now this viceroy could nominate some of the Indians in the form of non-official members. So there was some increased number of additional members were there, and this was introduced in both the central as well as the provincial legislative councils. Okay, but you have to maintain the official majority. Okay, you can nominate some of the Indians as non-official members, but who will be this enjoying the majority? The official members. Then the increased functions of the legislative councils. So we will see that there was some discussion on budget also. Okay, that could be be known to the Indians also, that some discussion was done on budget and some questions were to be addressed on the budget also, but some questions were not followed. Only the budget was discussed and the questions, some questions were raised, they could raise. Okay, then some nominations were made. For these, I told you there were some nominations made for the non-official members. So if it is in Central Legislative Council, it was on the recommendation of the Provincial Legislative Council and Bengal Chamber of Commerce. But if it is for Provincial Legislative Council, it was on the recommendation of all these. You never know, this can be asked as a statement. In the municipality, they can write panchayat or whatever they can change. Okay, you should be knowing. So district board is there, municipality is there, university is there, trade association is there, zamindar is there, chamber is there. Okay, so these things you should be knowing. Abu Zaid is saying that my voice is not heard. Am I audible or not? Okay. Then you might have some problem, Abu Zaid. You can just check your connection. Okay. So nomination, I told you, Rohit, I'm saying that nomination used to be done by the viceroy for the non-official members. Okay. Now, how to do the nomination in case of Central Legislative Council and in case of Provincial Legislative Council? If it is a Central Legislative Council, it is on the recommendation of Provincial Legislative Council. That means this, along with the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. So at that time, you had the some. Okay. So at that time, there were some important, from commerce point of view, there were this board was there, so it was having some important say, okay, because they were dealing with the commerce, so they were important. So their recommendation was taken. For Provincial Legislative Council, these were all whose recommendations were considered. Firstly, the district board. Secondly, the municipalities. Then the universities. Then the trade association, zamindars, and these chambers. Okay, again, these were commerce chambers. Okay, so although the indirect elections were there, this is sort of the nomination, then sort of some indirect elections, but the word election was not used. So if it is asked that in 92 Councils Act, some indirect elections were done, this and that, you cannot be sure, because why? The election word is not used there. So there might be some problem in that statement that you have to identify. Okay, just remember this. Some the non-official members were added and some discussions and questions were asked on budget, and this is how the nominations were done. Just remember these. Okay, bus. More than this will not be asked. Then is this important act, again questions are asked in 119. So this is also called as Morley Minto reforms. Now you know why. Okay, why this is called as Morley Minto? Because Morley was the Secretary of State and Minto was the Viceroy. Okay. So what are the features? Increase size of the legislative councils, because you have to include more and more non-official members, so size have to be increased. So for Central, it was from 16 to 60, and for PLCs, it was not uniform. In some provincial, it was some number, it was X. At some other, it was Y. At some other, it was Z. Okay. So the increased size. Second, the official majority was there in the CLC. Official majority was to be maintained, but in PLC you can go for non-official majority also. So this was again a new development. Yeah, but again this was nominated but not elected. See, nominated again. You have to remember this, not elected. Okay, 2 points in 1909. Now, some deliberative functions were increased. Why? Because now you can ask the supplementary questions on budget also. In earlier act, you saw that supplementary questions were not included. Only first questions were asked. Now even the supplementary can ask, and you can also move resolutions. Then first time there were some Association of India with the Executive Councils. Till now you saw the Association of India with the Legislative Council, not with the Executive Council. Okay, this is for the first time. Executive Council. And who was the first? The SP Sinha, who was a law member. This you should remember. Then communal representation for the first time. This point is asked every year by the UPSC. So separate electorate, where for the first time asked, given, okay, for the Muslims. So Lord Minto is therefore he is considered as the father of communal electorate. Then separate representation was given to the presidency corporation also, Bengal, this chamber of commerce also, and universities and zamindars also. So if it is asked that only this particular section was given the separate electorate at that time, no. Yeah, these were also given. Okay, so this you have to remember. So then comes the 1990. So this is called as Montfort Act. Why? Because this was the SOS, this was the Viceroy. Okay. So before this, there was this August Declaration. You might have read this in history that August Declaration is nothing, but the British government itself said that our ultimate aim is to introduce the responsible government in India. So this was August Declaration, and after this 1919 Act had another provisions that they wanted to introduce some sort of responsible government. So it was at both the levels, the provincial at the central. Okay, at central we had the central legislature, and for central legislature it has its own list, the central list of subjects. Then for provincial legislature you had the provincial list of subjects. But here there was a sort of catch. Why catch? Because it was a sort of diarchy, okay, in provincial legislature. Why diarchy? Because the subjects, the provincial list of subjects was divided in the transferred and the reserved. Okay. In transferred, you have the governor and the ministers. They could deliberate, they could decide upon the things. Therefore, since there are ministers, therefore you can say it was a responsible government. So they were responsible to the legislative council. But in case of reserved, reserved, here it could be, it was a sort of closed door meeting between the governor and the among the governor and the executive council. So they can do whatever they want, and this legislative council were not to be sort of deliberated on. Okay, so this was sort of no responsibility. So here you have to remember, in transfer subject there was responsibility, in reserve subject there was no responsibility. Okay, then this is also asked whether this particular list is within the transferred list or within the reserved list. So it should be very clear that all the important things are kept within the reserved. For example, law, finance, revenue, etc. Okay, these are within the reserved. And in case of transferred, local self-government, education, excise, health, these small things that you will see today also, whatever given the local government, that is not important. So you have to remember the list. Okay, so the diarchy, the provinces, and there were almost 8 provinces where this diarchy was introduced. So you can see the names of the provinces. Okay, I don't think this can be asked. It has not been asked till now, but you should just read these because you never know. Okay, then there was bicameralism and direct election. See, for the first time direct election was mentioned. So election you have to remember 1919. Okay, so the bicameralism is there, and upper house is there, lower house is there. Upper house called as a council of state, and lower house legislative assembly. So remember the tenure also 5 years and 3 years. Okay, in the Viceroy's executive council, 3 out of were now the Indian. So earlier, see, was on one was there, right? The SP Sinha. Now it is the 3 out of 6. Okay, are you getting me? So 3 are now the Indians. This is again very important point. And now the communal representation is extended. Earlier it was for Muslims. It's for 6 now. It's for Indian Christians. It's Anglo-Indians. It's Europeans. Okay, so all these are included with the communal representation. The franchise was limited. Okay, it was only in case of some things, those who were having, some property, paying some taxes, having some education also. So they were given the franchise. Okay, not everybody enjoyed the franchise at that time. Then the office of Commissioner for India in London was also created. So earlier we had the Secretary of State. Now there is something called as Office of High Commissioner. Okay, so some functions of SOS were to be given to the High Commissioner, because we were going for more and more, a division of the powers and decentralization, all these things. So this a post was created. Then there was establishment of the Public Service Commission also, and at center we had the 1926 we had the CPSC, okay, Central Public Service Commission. Then appointment of the statutory commission was there. It was said that after 10 years this will be appointed, okay, after 10 years, but provision was kept in this act only. Okay, So these are all provisions of this act. And now in 1927, ठीक है, not in 1929, which was actually the time for this, है ना, because you know all the things in the history you have read it. So the Simon Commission was appointed 2 years before the actual date, है ना, because it was not 10 years yet. Then it was 7-member, you know that, ठीक है, it was just to report on the conditions of India under the new constitution, because 1919 act was given shape. Then it submitted its report in 1930, and the report talked about these 4 things. What are the things? It said that you should not continue diarchy, you should continue the responsible government of provinces, communal electorate is fine, and you should extend it, and the federation should be started. Okay, now the federation we will see in 1935. Okay. And then after this, there were the round table conferences also. And after the Simon Commission and round table conferences, we prepared a white paper. I mean, they prepared the paper, okay, on the reforms, and it was then sent to the Joint Select Committee. And finally, it was incorporated in the 1935 Act. Okay. So, in the backdrop of that, you know that in 1932, MacDonald came with some another khurafati idea, hai na? The communal representation should be extended to the depressed classes, to the Dalits also. Okay? But then after so much of the debate and negotiation, there was this Pune Pact, where the joint... Sorry?
हाँ, actually sorry to disrupt, but वो आ रही है अभी भी ना, voice break ही हो रहा है, so like if you can please keep your video off, so you can teach like that, not an issue.
Okay.
ठीक है? हाँ, thank you.
So how would I know? Is it fine now after disconnecting video?
हाँ, better, definitely better.
ठीक है. Sorry for the network problem. So anyway, there was this Pune Pact. So in Pune Pact, we had the joint Hindu electorate and the reservation to the Dalits were given. Okay? So this you already know. So after this, we came with the Government of India Act 1935. So in 1935, it was a huge act because there were 321 sections and 10 schedules. Okay? This was again the milestone towards the completely responsible government in India, because after August Declaration, Britishers wanted to come up with the responsible government in India. So what were the features? All India Federation was to be created. Why? Because Simon Commission had recommended this. Okay? So in the federation, who all will be there? Firstly, the provinces, the British provinces. Secondly, the princely states. Then there was this division of subjects again. So it was between the center. For center, it was the federal list. For provinces, it was a provincial list. And for them, there was some concurrent list also. Hai na? The same scheme we have today also. Then there are some residuary powers which will go to the viceroy. Then diarchy at provinces. This was discontinued, but provinces were given the autonomy and responsible government. Okay? This was 35. Then Simon Commission had recommended what? You should done away with the diarchy at provinces, but you should introduce it at the center. So then at the center, we had federal subjects were divided into reserved and transferred. Okay, in the same way, earlier in 1919, it was at the provinces, but now it is at the center. And now the bicameralism was introduced in provinces. Okay, it was just a reverse of 1919. So 6 out of 11, these all provinces, the bicameralism was introduced. Then communal representation was extended again. So SC, that is the Dalits, scheduled caste, women and labor, they were given the communal representation. Okay. Then it also abolished the Council of India, which earlier was for the Secretary of State, but Secretary of State was now assisted by the team of advisors. Then you have the franchise. Okay. Earlier I told you it was on the basis of property, tax and education. Now it was extended to at least 10% of population. Okay. And RBI was there to control the currency and the credit of the country. This is again an important point. And there was this provincial PSC. PSC was already there. Now it was the provincial, and the joint one was also there. Okay. And then the SC. So earlier we had the Supreme Court, you know what all were the powers, it was just an eyewash. But now there was a provision for the creation of federal court so that we can give more and more powers to the judiciary. Okay. So this was the 1935 Act. Now comes the last act, that is the 1947. So you know already. Okay. 3rd June plan, why this is called as 3rd June. Okay. Mountbatten introduced it. And there was this partition plan, creation of the India and Pakistan. Okay. This ended the British rule in India. So now India is independent and sovereign, and there are 2 dominions created, and Viceroy was abolished. Okay. But the Governor General continued, that you know already. Mountbatten was the first Governor General of India. The 2 dominions could adopt their own constitution. They abolished the office of SOS. Okay. And there was this lapse of British paramountcy also, and the British princely states and tribal areas, they can decide on their own which dominion to join. And no veto was given to the British monarch. Okay. Now it is with the Governor General. And you know that there were so many dominions under the British. There were so many, possessions or the territories under the British. So there were so many royal titles of King of Britain. And among all those titles, the title of Emperor of India was dropped, because now the king was no longer the Emperor of India. So on 1415 August, we know what happened. Okay. So Mountbatten was the first Governor General and Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India. Okay. So then there was, you know that in the meantime, there was this interim government. You have to remember all these members, okay, and their portfolios. Again, very important. Then please remember this. Nehru, he Internal Affairs and Commonwealth Relations. Vallabhbhai Patel, you know that, Home Information. Rajendra Prasad with the food. And John Mathai with the industries and supplies. You have to remember this. Okay, cram this. Then Jagjeevan Ram Labor. Then Baldev Singh Defense. Baba with the works, mines and power, then Liaquat Ali Khan finance, Abdur Rab Nishar the post and air, Asif Ali railways, Rajagopal Achari education, Chundrigar commerce, Ghazanfar health. You know this. Okay, Jogendranath Mandal law. Okay. This was asked in the form of a statement. In the interim government, who was the vice president of council. Okay. The correct answer was Jawaharlal Nehru. This we will see tomorrow. Then in the first cabinet, again, there was some little bit of change that you can see from the table. Okay. Just the change little bit. So this continued, then you can check the rest. Okay. Because it's already 8:20. I cannot read this. Just try to cram these. There is no other option. Okay. So this was your first chapter. Now is your second chapter, the making of constitution. Again, this is very factual. Okay, only the dates, etc., are to be remembered, and that you have to do. There is no other shortcut. Just 1 second. Let me connect the charger. Okay. So now there was this demand for the, because they wanted to make the constitution, there was this demand for the creation of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, this demand was there. It was from 1920s. This demand was there. Okay, in 1922, Mahatma Gandhi ji had also demanded for this. But in 1934, you see the first mention. It was a sort of mature given by M.N. Roy, who was a communist. Okay, he also officially demanded it. Then you have to remember these dates. Then in 1838, Nehru again demanded that we want our constitution to be framed by our Constituent Assembly. Okay. And in 1940, you see that it was a sort of demand was sort of accepted, but it was not very clear, this acceptance. Okay, it was sort of vague. ठीक है, we will give some provision, we will put for you, okay, for the creation of the Constituent Assembly in the August offer. Okay. But in Cripps mission, it was again then sort of given some shape. Okay. But since this was not accepted by Muslim League, and then we came with the Cabinet Mission in 1946. Okay. So in Cabinet Mission, we see the scheme for Constituent Assembly, which was accepted by the Muslim League also. Now this composition you have to remember. Okay. So Constituent Assembly was supposed to have 389 members. So among the 389, 296 were with the Britain and 93 for the princely states. 296 was to be arranged in a way that 292 went to the governor provinces and 4 went to the 4 chief commissioner provinces. So these were the this is actually the current it resembles the current scenario also, like we have the states and the UTs. Okay, it was a sort of that only. So governor provinces were there and chief commissioner. So it was a sort of different this governing unit. So just remember 292 and 4. Okay. Then each princely state got some seats in proportion to the population. Hai na? We have that even today also, that each seat is for some particular proportion of population. For example, 1 seat for 1 million population. Then for British province, seats were divided among the Muslim, Sikhs and general. Okay, because why? We had the separate electorates. Then voting was by means of proportional representation and single transferable vote. I have explained it. I cannot explain it right now. Okay, because we don't have time. So for princely states, representatives were to be nominated by heads of princely states. Okay, so they will nominate their these heads, and they will directly become the representatives of these princely states. Now we can say that this constituent assembly was partly nominated and partly elected, and those who were elected, those were elected indirectly by the provincial assemblies. Okay, again there was this indirect sort of representation. So then there was this election you might have done in the history. INC got these seats, है ना? Then 90 seats were left unfilled because princely states did not join. Okay. Then what was the working? So you have to remember the first meeting when it occurred. Okay, this is important from pre, and it's asked in PT also. PT means the personality test. Okay. So the first meeting was held in December 9, 1946. Then it was attended by 211 members only. Okay, because Muslim League boycotted. Then this figure you have to remember, Sachinand Sinha. He was the oldest member, since it was the convention at that time. Whosoever is the oldest member, he was made the temporary president. Okay. Then we elected it. The president was elected then on December 11. This date again you have to remember. Why? Because this might be asked. Okay. So this first, the 9 December, 11 and this 13 December, 9, 11, 13. Just remember it. Okay. So Rajendra Prasad was made the president, Mukherjee the vice president, and B.N. Rao the constitutional advisor. So these 3 names again you have to remember. Then the precursor of the preamble, that is the objective resolution. 13 December 1946, Nehru moved it. And what is this? This is nothing but the fundamentals and the philosophy of whatever we have in the constitution. Okay, so this is actually the heart of that. So it entailed what? The India will be the independent sovereign republic, and we shall be dealing with these in the next chapter. Okay. Then India shall be the union of British India, Indian states and other parts. Okay. Other parts can be anything. It can be outside India. It can be if anybody wants to join India. Then the territory will retain, and these territories shall retain and possess the status of autonomous units. Whatever territory will be there, these will be autonomous, and they will be having some residuary powers. Okay, and all the other powers which are not under the union directly, so they will go to these provinces. Then the power and authority, whatever we have in the sovereign and independent India, that comes from the people only, because we, the people of India, we are supreme. Then people shall be guaranteed with all this, this is what we have in preamble also: justice, equality of status and opportunity, freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, action, etc. Okay, so these things are there. Some safeguards were given to all these minorities, backward classes, tribal areas, depressed classes, OBCs. So if you are asked a statement that this was the in the objectives resolution also, then yes, it was. And you should be remembering these categories also. Then the maintenance of integrity and sovereignty over the land, sea and air, obviously. Okay. Then the ancient law, then the ancient land that India is. India should not only work for the peace of its own territory, but the world and overall the welfare of humankind. So this was a general point. Then in 2020, it was unanimously adopted and it today is what we call as the preamble. Okay, all these points are sort of rearranged and preamble is made. Then there were some changes by the Independent Act. What were the changes? Firstly, we will see 3 changes were made. Firstly, the assembly was now made the fully sovereign. Second, assembly will act as a legislative body, but the legislative body will be firstly can at one time it used to meet as a constitution making body, at the other time it used to meet as a ordinary law making body. So during the time of making of constitution, Rajendra Prasad chaired this assembly, and during the time of this making body, this Mavlankar chaired, because Mavlankar was very much well versed with this lawmaking process. So this continued till November 26, 1949. Okay, you have to remember this date, very important date. Then Muslim League, they withdrew, and then the strength was reduced. Okay, earlier it was 299, now it was 229 and 70 only. Okay. 299. So 299 will be from Indian provinces and 70 for the princely states. So now it is 299 only. Okay. So this was a sort of change made in the act. Then there were some other functions also performed. How? That is, the assembly also ratified the India's membership to the Commonwealth. Then the Indian this national flag was adopted. This date you have to remember, 22nd July 1947. Then national anthem again was adopted on 24 Jan. Then national song was adopted on 24 Jan. Okay. On 24 Jan, these 3 things were done. So you can remember one date only for these 3: national anthem, song, and Rajendra Prasad was made the president. So for flag, you have to remember 22nd July. Okay, this can be asked in the statement. Then we had 11 sessions in total, which was for 21118 time, that is 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So 21118. Then total 60 countries were consulted, and it was considered for 114 days. You never know, anything can be asked. So this was the expenditure. So just remember, on 24 Jan 1950, there was this final session. Okay. This session was final, but then it continued till 1951-52. This assembly. Okay. This arrangement continued till the first general election. Then there are some committees. These are also asked. Hai, these major committees are asked. These are okay. Then these minor committees, these are not asked. You can just skip it. So Union Powers Committee, you have to remember Jawaharlal Nehru. Union, again, Constitution, Nehru. Provincial Constitution, Sardar Patel. Drafting Committee, you know, B.R. Ambedkar. Then there is this Advisory Committee, Sardar Patel, but it had 5 subcommittees. Firstly, the Fundamental Right, that is Kriplani. Then Minority Subcommittee, that is Mukherjee. For Northeast Tribal Province and Assam, it was Gopinath. And for other than Assam, it was A.V. Thakkar. Then for Rules of Procedure, it was again Prasad. Okay. Then States Committee, again Nehru. And Steering Committee, again Prasad. Okay. You can just read these once. Okay, because you never know UPSC, but till now I don't think from minor these committees any question has been asked. So just go once. Okay, go only. Then Drafting Committee. So this is again very important, because this committee was responsible for drafting the constitution. It was set up in August 29. Then who all were the members? Ambedkar, Swami Iyengar was there, Aladi Krishna Swami Iyer, Munshi, okay, Sadullah, Madhav Rao, and Krishnamachari. Just read these names so that you become familiar and you can just eliminate the option. Okay. Then the first draft was prepared and it was published in Feb. Then it took some 8 months to discuss the draft. Okay. After the discussion, then the final, there was the second draft, which was published in October. So in total, you just have to remember that it took 141 days. So they sat for 141 days and then they came up with the final draft. Okay. So you can say lesser than 6 months or 141 days. Then there was the enactment of the Constitution. So how we enacted it. So I don't think this discussion will be asked what happened in first reading, what happened in second reading. Okay, I don't think this will be asked, but just that Ambedkar introduced the final draft on this date, 4th November. Just remember this. Then there was some discussion. Then there was second reading. There was third reading. Then he moved motion. The regime passed. It was passed. Okay, it was declared to be passed. This date is important. Why? Because on this date we adopted the Constitution. This everybody knows. Hai na? Then just remember 395 articles and 8 schedules, and preamble was enacted after the entire constitution. So firstly, we came up with all the articles and all the schedules. Then at the end, we presented the preamble so that it can suit the entire constitution better. Okay. Now the enforcement of constitution. Now you should know that not entire constitution was enforced at once. Some provisions were enforced first, and then the other provisions came later. Okay. So on this date, on the date we adopted the constitution, only these articles were enforced. Okay. These are actually the articles which are very important at that time. Okay. For example, president is there, executive powers are there, Article 5, 6, 7, 8 is there. So these articles were there, and the later were then enforced on the 26th January 1950, and that is celebrated as the Republic Day because of this reason. You might have this in history. Then there was this expert committee of Congress also. Again, this was not in the previous editions, has been included in this. So I thought to include this. So what is this expert committee? This expert committee actually it was there to prepare the procedure. Okay. So what all procedure is to be adopted by the assembly, and who all be their appointed members, and what should be the draft, okay, for the resolutions, etc. So this was the mandate of this committee, and these were the members: the Nehru, okay, Asif Ali, Munshi, Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Shah. You can just read these: Gadgil, Humayun Kabir, and Santhanam. Okay. Then it had 2 sittings. Not important, I don't think so. Then this is important. Why? Because Granville Austin has said something that this is very important. So because of this committee, Indian Constitution is what it is currently. And why? Because it made so many suggestions on the autonomous areas, provincial government, center, this and that. Okay. So this was just the commit made by the Granville Austin. This won't be asked. I don't think so. Then the criticism, again, this is for mains, you can read it. For pre, you don't need this. Okay. This was just a representative body, just not the sovereign. Okay. Time consuming. Just you can just read this: dominated by Hindus, lawyer, politician, domination. Okay. Not important. And yes, this can be asked in the form of a statement. Okay. So this what is a symbol of the Constituent Assembly, and B.N. Rao is the Constitution Advisor. Iyengar was the Secretary to Constituent Assembly. Mukherjee the Chief Draftsman. So here people confuse with the B.R. Ambedkar. So it is not the case. You have to remember the Mukherjee was the Chief Draftsman of Constitution. Then Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada, he was a calligrapher, and the calligrapher for the Hindi version was Krishna Vaidya, and the Hindu text was later introduced by adopted by the 58th Constitution Amendment Act. You can remember this. Okay, this is the particular article 394A. Okay, so this is it from this chapter. Now let us move. So the questions are asked from this also. Okay, salient features of Indian Constitution. Okay, so the first is the lengthiest. We know that so there are articles, so many parts, so many schedules. This we know. So earlier we know that 395 we just read it. 395 articles were there, and 22 parts were there. 8 schedules were there, and later on the preamble was added. But currently the preamble is there, but we have so many articles. 470, more than 470 are there. 25 parts, 12 schedules, and these were all because of all these things. These were deleted. Some articles were deleted, and what was added was some 95 articles were added. 4 parts were added. You have to remember these parts. This is part 4A, 14A, 9B, and 14A. Okay. 4A, 9A, 9B, 14A. You have to remember this. Then schedules you already know, 9, 10, 11, 12 were added later. Why do we have this lengthiest written constitution? Because of these factors. Because we have the geographical this extent of India. It is a huge, it is a sort of subcontinent, so we have to incorporate all those areas. Then historical factor, I told you 1935 is actually the base, the structural portion we have taken from this. The single constitution for center and the state, and dominance of there were so many lawyers only, so they kept on adding the pages. Okay, so this is the reason for lengthiest. Then this is taken from so many sources, and it was some people criticize it, but B.R. Ambedkar proudly said that we have ransacked almost all the famous constitutions of the world, and we have come up with this Indian Constitution. So the structural part you have to remember from 1935. Philosophical part, I think this was also asked as an MCQ. philosophical part comes from fundamental rights and DPSPs. Okay. Then you have to remember this chart. Okay, this can be asked. This is very important. So anything can be asked. So from this you have to see what all were taken. Okay, cram whatever you have to do, you should do that. Okay, you should be knowing which all features were taken from which source. Then British Constitution, you know that parliamentary rule of law is state with a single citizenship cabinet system and all these things. Okay, I cannot just read each and every word because we are already 8:38 is. ठीक है, उसके बाद US we took what the fundamental rights, the independence of judiciary, then judicial review, impeachment of president and Supreme Court judges, High Court judges removal, then post of high vice president. ठीक है, from Irish Constitution just remember DPSPs and nomination of Rajya Sabha members, method of election of president. Then Canadian, you can see the centralizing tendency, the strong center residuary powers with the center, then appointment of governor by the center, है ना, and all these things. Then the Australian, we have these concurrent list, freedom of trade, commerce, intercourse, etc., joint sitting. Weimar, just remember the suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. Soviet Union, fundamental leave, and the justice word that we have in the preamble. Then in France Constitution, we have the liberty, equality, and fraternity. Then South Africa, we have the amendment, the procedure of amendment, and the election of members of Rajya Sabha. Then from Japan, we have the procedure established by law. You have to remember this table. Then the political part we have taken from the British Constitution because we have consulted that also. And rest we just read this in the form of a chart. Hai na? You can just revise it again and again. Then we have a blend of flexibility and rigidity. Okay, what is rigidity? Rigidity means that when the constitution is very difficult to amend, it becomes the rigid one. And if it is very easy to amend, it becomes a flexible one. So we have taken neither this nor this, but the mix of. So some provisions is very difficult. For example, Article 368 is very difficult, but others we can do by ordinary this majority also, simple majority also. Okay. So the synthesis of both. So Article 368 we can see this is actually the rigid one. So here we have the special majority and the special majority with the ratification of half of the states. And we have done this in detail. I cannot go into that detail right now. So special majority here means just the 2/3 of the president voting and majority of total membership. Okay, so this type of this majority will come under Article 368, and this special majority plus the ratification of that is at least 14 states ratify, then only this particular special majority will be passed. Okay. Then additionally some provisions are there which are outside the Article 368, which is the simple majority that you know. Okay. Then we have some provisions federal, some unitary. So you should be able to identify which one is federal, which one is unitary. Again, this is very important. And you cannot confuse between these two. Okay, just read this table. Then again, it talks something about this unitary bias. Why? Because the union of states, okay, with no state has right to secede. Okay. Why we have not taken the word federation? This was also asked by UPSC. We don't have the word federation in Article 1. We have the word union. Why? Because we are not union because of agreement. No, we are union because of this without any agreement. There is no terms and conditions, and then no state has right to secede. Okay. Then these are some comments. Okay, this won't be asked. Don't worry, but this you can use in means if you want. So Casey Ware has said this is quasi-federal, because this is not federal. Morris Jones has said this is a bargaining federalism. Then Austin has said cooperative federalism. Okay. Then you have parliamentary form of government. This is again very important. Why? Because in parliamentary they have to take care of certain this points which are here. So whenever you are asked what is parliamentary form of government, these 6 points should come to your mind. Okay. So this is nominal and real head. Okay, we have both the president and the prime minister. Then majority party rule. Then the collective responsibility of executive to legislature. Then the members are the ministers are the members of legislature also. Then who is the leader? Prime minister is the leader, and you can review the house also. Therefore, we say that there is this cooperation and coordination between legislative and executive. And this again, you can remember, this is also called as a responsible government. Okay. Therefore, what is the difference between Britain former parliamentary system and Indian? In India, we are not sovereign body. Indian parliament is not sovereign because you can dissolve it also. Okay. And who is actually the supreme? People are supreme. Okay. There is some limitation on legislature, some limitation on executive, some limitation on judiciary. Okay. Nobody has been kept supreme. Then Indian state has republic head, not hereditary. So this is the difference between Britain and us. Then we are a synthesis of both the parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. So some privileges have been given to the parliament that we will read in the parliament chapter, and some safeguards are there for the judiciary also that we will do in the judiciary. So we have taken the mix of both. We have integrated and independent judiciary. What is that? This is the scheme of the judiciary. The Supreme Court is at the top, then High Court, then subordinate courts. Then in independent judiciary, we have security of tenure is there, service conditions, expenditure charge on CFI. It has also the punishment contempt. Then fundamental rights, you know that there are 6 fundamental rights, so you have to remember these articles. Okay. Then and you should be knowing, like in right to equality, which all are the articles. In rights against exploitation, which all are the articles. In right to constitutional remedy, which one is the article? Okay. So this is a part 3. It promotes the political democracy. Okay. Then so it is just a limitation on the, you cannot just assume the arbitrary power. Okay, it is just a limitation on the executive, but they are justiciable in nature. If these are violated, you can go to the court. Then fundamental rights, these are not absolute, these are subject to the reasonable restrictions. You know, there are so many restrictions that we do in the fundamental rights chapter. Then these are not sacrosanct. Why? Because you can just curtail or repeat them by means of amendment. Then these can be suspended during emergency, except these two, 20 and 21. Then you have DPSPs part 4. So this is regarded as a novel feature by the this Ambedkarji. Okay, this is you have to remember, this can be asked as a statement. Then this is of 3 types. And you have to remember that this is not in the constitution. Okay, this typology is not in the constitution for our ease. Okay, the socialistic, the Gandhian, and the intellectual. It promotes the social and economic democracy. See, in the FR we had the political democracy, but at DPSPs we have the social and the economic democracy. You have to remember this. Then it talks about the welfare state in India. But these are non-negotiable. You cannot approach to the court. Okay? These are just the moral obligations on the state. And Minerva Mills case, it has been reiterated that you just have to maintain the balance between the fundamental right and the DPSPs. Nobody is superior over the other. Just maintain the balance. Then there are fundamental duties also. Part, this. Okay, 4A. Then this was added during the internal emergency by 42nd Amendment Act on the, you have to remember this, Sovereign Committee recommendation. Then this also you have to remember, 86th Amendment Act. Okay, it added one more fundamental right. So now we have the 11, sorry, FD. So now we have the 11 fundamental duties. Okay, then what is the other feature that we have? The secular state. Secular in the sense that no particular religion is the official religion of India. All the religions are same. We cannot give any advantage to any particular religion. Okay. So the term secular, it was there, it was implicit in India also, because these articles were there already, but it was made explicit by the 42nd Amendment Act. Okay. So these all are the articles. If you have to support that we are a secular country, you can quote these articles. Then there's a difference between the Western model and the Indian model. What is the Western model? It talks about the separation of the religion from the state. Okay, so the state will not totally, the state will just cut off. It will not intervene in the religious matters. But in India, state will intervene if there is some particular. Suppose there was this triple talaq, so this thing was there, or suppose there is this female genital mutilation. So the parliament can come up with a law, okay, criminalizing this the way this was criminalized. Okay? So there we can intervene. It's not that we are there is this complete separation. No, there is not. If there is some, if the state needs to, if the state wants to, this plug any loophole, then it can. Then this is a positive concept, and it is just to give respect to all the religions, and we want to protect all the religions equally. Then we have universal adult franchise. So whosoever is of 18 years of age can enjoy the right to vote. Okay, no discrimination will be enjoyed. Then the voting right, this you have to remember, it was reduced from 21 to 18 by this Amendment Act. This is important. Okay, this is so many number of times. Then we have single citizenship, you know that. Then we have some independent bodies apart from legislative, executive, and judiciary. These are the bulwarks of constitution, bulwarks of democracy. I had remembered SICU. Okay, SICU, S was a State Public Service Commission, E was a Election Commission, C was a CAG, and U was a UPSC. So you can remember these four. Okay, these are the bulwarks of democratic system. Then you have the emergency provisions. This you know that for extraordinary situations you need some extraordinary provisions. Therefore, this provision, these articles were there. It is just to safeguard the sovereignty, unity, integrity, and security of India. And these are of three types. You know that national emergency is there. And we will do this separately. State emergency is there under Article 356, and financial emergency is there under Article 360. And if there is some threat to the financial stability, but till now this has not been invoked. Then we have a three-tier government. 73rd, 74th Amendment was enacted. Now we have a three-tier government. Earlier we had the center and state only. Now we have the local governments also. And this introduced a Part 9 and Schedule 11, Part 9A and Schedule 12. So these are just the features that you already know. Then there are cooperative societies. This is a very important Amendment Act, 97 Amendment Act. Okay? It gave this constitutionality to this cooperatives. Then these articles were then sort of changed. So it made the right to form cooperative societies as a fundamental right. And then it included a new DPSP 43B and new Part 9B, and these were the articles. Now the criticism is not important for pre, this is for mains. Okay, you can just read it, so no big deal. Okay, and this is just a description of the same. These points are just described. Okay, so now let's move to the chapter 4. Now this is important because the terms are asked. Okay, so I will be just quickly going through this chapter. So firstly, the introduction or a preface. This is what is the preamble, just the introduction of the constitution, or the preface of the constitution, or the essence of the constitution. So Palkhiwala has considered this as the I card of constitution. Okay, it is based on nothing but the objective resolution that we just read. It was drafted by the Nehru and adopted by the Constituent Assembly unanimously, that we read. Then it was amended in 42nd Amendment Act, and these SSI terms were introduced. Okay. The socialism, secularism, and integrity words were introduced. Then what is the ingredient? I had told you last time also, it is SNOD, SNOD. Okay. S is the source of the constitution. So we are the source of constitution. We gave ourselves to this constitution. Okay. What is the nature? Nature is this: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Okay, remember these words. Then what is the objective? Objective is a JLEF. What is JLEF? Justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Then what is the date of adoption? 26 November. We just read it. So this is nothing that what is preamble? It embodies the fundamental values, philosophy, the ideals, aspiration of the people of India. And Supreme Court has said that this, if you have to read the minds of the constitution makers, so you can read the preamble. Okay. Then what is this? This is nothing but the essence of the constitution. Then the first keyword. Okay, this is asked. I think every year you will find a question from this chapter. So sovereign, what is sovereign? Sovereign means independent. Just remember each and every word written on this page. Independent. Okay. What is independent? Complete political freedom. Then it's neither a dependency nor a dominion. Okay. No authority above it. We can take our own decisions. If you want to cut up with any nation, we can. Nobody can come and challenge us. Okay. No authority can challenge us. Then we are sovereign. Sovereign in the sense that we are totally politically independent, and therefore we can acquire any foreign territory. Nobody can challenge us, or we can cede any part of territory, like we ceded the Birubari part. So we can do, because we are sovereign. Second is the socialistic. What is socialistic? It was, I told you, SSI was introduced by 42nd Amendment Act. So what is S? S is the socialism, secularism, and integrity. So socialism, 42nd, what is socialism? Earlier it was implicit, now it was made explicit. Okay. So we have a democratic socialism. We don't have socialism per se, as was existent in other parts of the world. Why? Because we have taken our own form of socialism that is called as the Gandhian socialism. Why? Because our aim of socialism is to end poverty, ignorance, disease, and inequality of opportunity. Okay? And whatsoever suits to end all these, we will take that particular form of socialism. Okay? So what suited India was the mixed economy, not the public, not the private, but a mix of both. So therefore it became the democratic socialism or the Gandhian socialism. Okay. Then you know that the new economic policy of 1991 that again diluted some of the socialistic credentials. Why? Because it gave more to the free markets. Okay. Then the word, but you should not say that we are no more socialistic. Okay. We still are socialistic. It's that the market was given some more access. Otherwise, we have our own form of socialism. Then what secular 42nd Amendment Act again, although it was again implicit, and because we had these articles, now it was made explicit in the form of this word, and this is nothing but a positive concept of secularism. Why? Because all the religions are equally important, or will be equally protected by the state and will have the same status. So we are neither religious, we are nor irreligious, nor anti-religious. We are simply non-religious. Okay. So religion should be limited to the individual's affair. So now there was a question asked that why secularism word was not put in the original constitution, and B.R. Ambedkar replied that it must be decided by people themselves. Okay, whether you want to be secular or you want to be religious, you should do it at your personal space. Okay, not publicly outside. But then there was this communal tension. Therefore, there it was important the word secular was to be mentioned in the preamble. Now comes the democratic. What do you mean by democratic? Okay. Firstly, the freedom of choice of people. So I have freedom. I can speak. Right now I'm speaking. Nobody can stop me. Okay. But obviously I cannot speak against the sovereignty of nation. That is there. But I have the freedom to speak. Then open to new idea and criticism equally. Okay. I should accept the criticism. I should accept the idea also. It's not that I'll continue my dogmas or and these things. Okay. So we are not bound. We are free. Then it also means that government gets authority from will of people. Okay. Why? Because we the people of India. So we will be electing our representative during the time of elections. So we have what? We have representative democracy because every 5 years we enjoy the right to vote, and because of right to vote we go for the universal suffrage and we choose our own representative. Therefore the democratic representative democracy. Then but we have not limited our democracy to political democracy only, but we have all the dimensions of democracy. We have political democracy, we have social democracy, we have economic democracy. Okay? And Nehru ji had said that earlier it used to be only the political democracy. That was a very past and obsolete idea. But now when we talk of democracy, we talk of social democracy also, we talk of economic democracy also. And that is what we have included in India. Then again, it can be direct, it can be indirect. Direct, as we see in Switzerland. So what is direct is we have the referendum initiative recall set. So it is given at the end of the Shmikant. You can see here what is referendum. If you want to propose a legislation, so the legislature will come up with the legislation and that will be referred to the electorate. Suppose we are the electorate, who all have crossed the age of 18, we are now the electorate. So we will be given this and we will be voting on this, whether we are for this or we are against this. So we will be expressing our views. That is a referendum. That is the initiative is like if suppose we are the people and we are ourselves, proposing some bill, okay, and then the legislature will enact that. Okay, so that will be our initiative. So that will be different from referendum. Then is a recall. Recall means before the expiry of the term, you are recalling an officer or an political this representative if they are not performing well. Okay, like we have in Switzerland, but we have in India at some local level also. But there is this plebiscite. What is plebiscite? It's a little bit different from referendum. So here, the people's opinion will be checked. How? The people's views will be obtained. ठीक है, on any issue whichever is publicly important. So usually it is for territorial disputes, whether you want to be whether this territory should be included in this, the people should be included within this territorial extent or not. So things like that are decided by the plebiscite. So there is a little bit of difference between the referendum and the plebiscite, है ना? So here just the opinion of the people is on any particular issue, opinion will be gauged and then it will be specific to this. But in referendum, any this this is any legislation will be referred to the people for their votes. Then now we have taken the representative democracy, okay, because the executive is responsible to the legislature, है ना? That is why this is called as a responsible government also. Then what is a manifest? If anybody asks you how can you say that India is democratic, why? Because we have the universal adult franchise, we have the rule of law, we have the periodic elections, we have the independent judiciary, and you can talk about all these things. Then Ambedkar ji has said that that political democracy, it cannot last until you have the social democracy. So we have all the democracies, political, social, economic. Then Supreme Court has again said that we want the egalitarian social order, therefore we need this social, economic and political democracy. Then is the republic word. This is again asked every year, okay? It means that we have supreme power is held by the people, है ना? That is why we elect our representative after every 5 years, okay? So there is no heredity, there is no monarchy. This is called as a political equality also. So it means that we are electing our head, that is the president, and he enjoys the power after till 5 years. Then it also means these two things, okay? This is asked actually, these two things. Firstly, we are vesting the political sovereignty in the people's hand and not in single individual like king, है ना? Because after every 5 years we will be deciding our own fate, like who will be governing, who will be ruling us, okay? So first is this. Second is the absence of any privilege. So no particular class will be given privilege. Suppose Adani, Ambani, and other important businessmen, suppose they will not be given extra votes, okay? Why? Because we are all equal, so we will be having the equal political democracy, equal this right to vote, okay? Everybody will have the political equality. Therefore, these two things you should remember on the head of republic, okay? Then what is justice? Justice, firstly, we have to remember we have taken from Russian Revolution, okay? And it means simply the social, economic, and political justice. And it also has the two on this connotations. One is the equal treatment of all citizens. This can be asked verbatim, okay? UPSC will just copy it. It copies it actually every year, okay? So it means either the equal treatment or it means the absence of privileges. So that is a just. If you are not giving any particular section any privilege, okay, so all are there equal. So apart from that, we are for the improvement of these backward classes, we are coming up with some affirmative action also. That is also called as justice, huh? Because they need the affirmative action. So you should know the meaning of these key terms. Then again, we are Ambedkar said that we have justice in all these affairs, not only in one but in all dimensions. Then we have social justice, we have economic and political. How social? We have this liberty, equality, fraternity. How economic? Because we are not discriminating, we want to eliminate the poverty and etc. And why political justice? Because everybody has right to vote, right to equal government. Anybody can political office, but will be decided, okay? The social, economic together are called as distributive justice, okay? Then you have the liberty. What is liberty? Again, it has two conditions. One is the absence of restraint, okay? This was asked number of times. Second, provide opportunities for development. Absence of restraint, this was the earlier concept used, but today in the contemporary times we use this particular meaning of liberty, providing opportunity development. For example, I think 1 year both the options were given in the paper, okay? So one option was absence of restraint, other option was providing opportunity. What to do? Both are the meaning of liberty. So this was the correct answer. Why? Because this is the current meaning and it used to be the earlier one, okay? Then so we have the liberty of, like, if you remember in the objective resolution, we had this word also. So here also we have liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. So there we had VAA also, vocation, association, and action, which is not there, which is not in the preamble. Okay, so we have liberty of type for only. Then this is not absolute but qualified, है ना? It's not that it will be absolute, but there will be again restrictions, reasonable restrictions, which I mentioned. What is equality? You are not giving any special privilege to any section, and you are giving everybody the adequate opportunity to grow without any discrimination. So this again will be in all the dimensions. So you will have the civic equality, the political equality, the economic equality. If you're writing in mains, you should be able to write these articles also. Okay. Then is the word fraternity. What is fraternity? Just a sense of brotherhood. So this is Article 51A, that is the fundamental duty. Then this also ensures the dignity of individual and also protects the unity and sovereignty of integrity of India. Then these are some comments that Munshi has said that dignity means personality of every individual is sacred. And this is my personality, it should be sacred. Nobody should come and violate this. Similarly, every individual is important. Then unity and integrity means both psychological and territorial. It's not that India's psychological integrity will not be maintained. So it's not only physical, it's something about psychological or mental also. So therefore, we have this Union of India, that is Article 1. Okay, this is indestructible. You cannot destruct the Union of India. This is the sort of sacrosanct. Okay. Then is the significance. This is the basic philosophy. I told you the noble vision of the Constituent Assembly, the dreams and the aspirations of Constitution makers. And these are some of the comments which will not be asked in the okay. You can use this in the mains only. So I said that this expresses something that I dreamt so long. Then Munshi has said that this represents the horoscope. Then Thakur Das Bhargava said this is very precious. This is the sort of constitution key or jewel of the constitution. Then Sir Ernest Barker, he was a constitution expert. He said that this is the keynote to constitution. Then now this is important from free. Okay, this you can skip. So in the 1960, remember that it was earlier held that this is not a part of constitution. Okay, it was said by the Supreme Court that this is not the part. Why? Because this was added at the end. And this is just the preface. Okay. Sorry, there was some error in the Zoom. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but your screen is not visible.
Yeah, I'll just share it.
Okay.
So now, the Keshan Bharati case, okay, it rejected the earlier view that this is definitely a part of the constitution, okay, and this was then reiterated by the LIC case that yes, this is an integral part of the constitution. However, again, this is not any source of power. Okay, you cannot just go to the court and say that this is written in the constitution, therefore I have this right or this privilege. No, this is not, because this is non-justiciable, okay, and non-enforceable. This is just a part of the constitution and reflects the basic or the essence of the constitution. Okay. Then the amenability, whether you can amend the preamble or not. Okay. Since preamble is a part of constitution as it was established in the Bharati case, therefore this can be amended. And we have the evidences in the 42nd Amendment Act. We have added these three words. Therefore, we have very much amended the preamble, and therefore this is amended. And since this is a part of constitution, then why it cannot be amended? Okay. So this is the chapter 4. Now is the last chapter. Shall we continue? Some are saying yes, some are saying no.
You guys can unmute and talk now. I have enabled the unmute feature. So tell us if you want us to continue with the lecture, or should we just directly go to doubt?
Ma'am, we can continue.
Ma'am, please continue.
Okay.
ठीक है मैम, continue.
The union and state. So here we will discuss about how the union was formed, how the states were, है ना? You might have read this a number of times. So firstly, what is Article 1? Article 1 is nothing but India, that is Bharat, is the union of states, है ना? We were just discussing that we have not taken the word federation, but we have taken the word union. Why? Because we have the reasons with us. Firstly, first reason is that there is no agreement and there is no right to secede. This was asked, okay, by the UPSC, that why the word federation is not there and why the word union is there. Okay, these were the two reasons. Then according to Article 1, what this territory word signifies? It signifies these three. Okay, it does not mean the states only, it does not mean the UTs only, but it means that if there is any other territory that may be acquired by the government of India at any time, at any other time. Okay, so that imaginary sort of thing that is not with us right now, but tomorrow it may be. For example, the Gilgit-Baltistan, for example, the Azad Kashmir that they call, है ना? So those can be included tomorrow within the Indian territory, so that therefore will become the part of the territory of India. Okay. Now, what is first schedule? Again, it has some connection with the Article 1. Why? Because it then talks about the territorial extent and the name of the state and the union territory. So the territory of India, that is all these three, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. It means it has some expression. It usually we take only states in this. Okay. Whenever we are talking Union of India, so it usually means the states. Okay, because for UTs we have some different provisions. Okay, and we have some special provisions also. Then we have some fifth and sixth also. Okay, but this is just for the states only when we take this union word. Okay, then acquiring foreign territories. This is again a part. What is this? If you have to acquire a foreign territory, because I told you that you can incorporate some part within the territory tomorrow, but this you can do under the international law. So what is the international law? There are three ways of doing this. One is the cession. Okay, if there is some treaty that this part will be included within our territory, okay, and that there will be some consensus built, or there will be some purchase. Suppose we will purchase tomorrow some island which is there in the Indian Ocean, suppose, or some government gifts us something, or there is some lease or some plebiscite, etc. So that is the way of doing this. Then second is the occupation, which we can occupy also some territory. Okay, we can do that because we are sovereign. Nobody can dictate us. Okay. Then we can conquest or we can subjugate also, like we have done in these cases. And nobody came to India and stopped us. Okay. These were within our dominion, so we just incorporated them in the different territories. This we will do in a while. So this is Article 1 and what the territory word means. Then the Article 2. Article 2 is simply to admit or to establish new states. Okay, not the UTs, because that is different, because I told you whenever we are talking of union, we mean usually the states. Okay. So Article 2 deals with all those new states which are not currently the part of India. There will be some other territories which are not currently suppose the part of India. Suppose there is some territory here which is not currently under India. So we can incorporate this. We can admit this within the Indian territory under the Article 2. Okay. Article 3, this is just the internal readjustment. Internal just remember this word. Okay. So whatever we have, this is the map suppose of India. Okay. So whatever we have there, suppose within this territory. So we can go for readjustment. We can give this part to this part, है ना? We can just extend the boundary. We can diminish the area. We can do whatever we want. ठीक है? So this is for the existing states. 2 was for the new states which were not there existent. 3 is for the existing states. Okay. So what about the parliament? And this is only with the parliament. State cannot do so. ठीक है? It can form a new state, like we have created the Telangana, or recently we did the Ladakh, but that is the union territory. Leave that. If you have to create some new territory, new state, sorry, then you can do that. Suppose Telangana created, then it can be done either by separation or by uniting some parts. Suppose इस state का थोड़ा सा, इस state का थोड़ा सा, they are combined and made the new state. ठीक है? Increase the area of some state. It can also diminish the area of some state. It can alter the boundaries. It can alter the name also. It can do whatever it wants. ठीक है? Who? The parliament. Remember the word parliament can. Okay. Under Article 3. Now there are 2 conditions for Article 3. Firstly, a recommendation of president. Secondly, before that, president refers the same to the state legislature. So suppose if you want to go for the alteration of boundary or alteration of the name, so the president will refer the bill to the state legislature, and the state legislature will examine whether this is good for us or not. Okay? So they will be expressing their views within some time period. But if they are expressing their views against, suppose no, we don't want to change our name. Okay? President is not bound to accept that. President can proceed with whatever plan it has. Okay? So it doesn't matter whether they accept or reject it. Okay? And for UTs, president does not even need to refer the bill to the state legislature. You don't need even to refer. Okay? In state, in case of state, you can at least refer, but you are not bound by their view, by their opinion. Okay? Then the parliament, we can say, it can simply redraw the political map of India. Okay? Within India, it can redraw whenever it wants without the state's consent. Therefore, it is rightly said that we are the indestructible union of destructible states, because you can destroy the states, you can merge, you can separate, you can cut, you can patch up, you can do whatever you want. Okay? So for states, you don't have the territorial integrity. Only you have the territorial integrity only in case of India. Okay? Not in case of state. Then you have Article 4. What is Article 4? Article 2 and 3. Whenever you are doing any amendment under Article 2 and 3, that will not be considered as the amendment under Article 368. Okay? This will be simply by the simple majority. Okay? Article 4 simply means that 2 and 3 is nothing but the amendment which is outside Article 368, not within. So there was a question. So does power under Article 3 also include power to cede the Indian territory to foreign country? So you can, because we have read we can cede. Why we can cede? We can incorporate, we can do whatever we want. Why? Because we are sovereign. Since we are sovereign, we can. Okay, yes, we can. But the only procedure given by the Article 368. So if you have to cede, then you have to follow 368. So there you will not say that this is Article 2, this is Article 3. No. Okay. There you will have the Article 368 in place. Okay. So Parliament can, because we are, because India. Okay.
Now you can begin.
Okay. So now is the evolution. So how the states were evolved. Currently we have 28 states and territories. So how we reached to this. Okay. So earlier we know that we were British provinces and we were princely states. Okay. British provinces were directly under the rule, the crown rule, and there were the princely states. Okay. There we had the native rulers. Then we know that there was Independence Act of 1947, and there was this creation of India and Pakistan, and princely states were given the choice whether to join this or this. Okay. Then out of 552, 549 joined India, but there were 3 remaining princely states. One was the Hyderabad, second the Junagadh, third the Kashmir. So they refused to join India, okay, at first. But Hyderabad was integrated by police action, Junagadh by referendum, and Kashmir by instrument of accession. ठीक है. Then in 1950, you have to remember that earlier we had four classification. We had Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D. Part A was for governor provinces. These were 9. Part B was for princely states with legislature. These were also 9. Part C was for chief commissioner states and princely states without legislature. Those were 10. And Part D was for Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay? But this was ad hoc because we had to obviously shift to something else. Okay? Then there was a demand of reorganization.